we're speeding. And Matan, I just need you to tell me your name, when you were born, the date, and where you were born. And where you are in the hierarchy of your family.
I'm the oldest one in the family to start with. And I was born November 21, 1921. In Wallagrass, and that little brown house is still up there.
So Matan, tell me what your earliest memories were of your mom and your dad.
Well, my earliest memories actually are when we stayed there. When we moved from there, I was 4. We moved to Eagle Lake, but before that, we had gone to Van Buren, Hamlin, just before. We stayed there, and my earliest memories are, well, Leonil was born there, and they had a railing around the porch. I couldn't get off the porch railing because it was right on the street. And like all kids, I threw my toys out. Poor Mom kept her running.
What kind of work did Dad do over there?
He was working at a mill there. There was a mill of some sort, of wood mill. I don't know what, some kind of wood mill. We moved from there to Wallagrass. That was Grandfather Labby's home. They had raspberries around the house, and they had a big, big lilac bush, I remember. What I remember most about the house is there was a little corner stairway that came out near the door, and I'd watch for Dad coming home from work. He used to walk to Soldier Pond to the potato house to work there. And I'd watch him coming home with his lunch pail. That's about all I remember about the house. And we moved to Eagle Lake, the house where we were all brought up. There was a Lebdet was there at the time there. She was a lady of the town. She ran a restaurant and boarding house and you name it.
What was you name it?
I don't remember, but she was a very public lady. Okay, I don't know how else you'd say it.
Bordello.
Just about. Well, we didn't call it then in those days, but the men who went there usually were well entertained. And she was packing her trunks. You know those trunks that had a drawer on top? She had 2 nice dolls in there, and I remember looking at them, and I wanted to touch Mom. I said, "Don't touch." And the lady told me, she says, "Oh, when you're big enough, I'll give you one." She never did, and I never forgave her. And that, kids, but you'll remember, huh?
Yeah.
I'll remember those dolls as long as I live.
So, what do you remember of your mama?
My mother was, she was entertaining. She used to, at night, we had a little battery radio, and she used to sing to us and tell us stories. In fact, the neighborhood kids would come and we'd sit all around her. She was knitting a mile a minute, and she'd tell us stories. All kinds, des contes français, French folk tales.
What was your favorite tale that she told you? Remember?
She told us all kinds of stories. Now, like the little books of Red Riding Hood and all these other stories, she used to read them to us before I could even read. I think it was like some of the kids today. You say they read because they know the words so well. So, all those little stories and poems and things. Mom was great.
Now,
we had a phonograph. What you have is a china cabinet at the cottage there. That was a phonograph. And it had big plates, so big plates. And somehow Dad had rigged up 2 little dolls that danced on it. They were hooked out onto the middle post there. Remember that? See? Not too many of them you remember that. And when that was going, they'd dance.
Now what other kind of things did you used to do? Do you used to do other things like that for you? Invent things for you? That's pretty neat. They did the little dolls.
Yeah. They did, Mom and Dad did all kinds. We had popcorn all the time and penny drink and Penny drink is like a homemade Kool-Aid. It was a little envelope, penny and envelope, and it made a quart of cold drink.
Okay.
I think Berna made two quarts with the same thing. Berna was very thrifty.
Is that when Dad started working on the railroad when you moved to Eagle Lake?
Yeah, that's why we moved to Eagle Lake, because Dad was going to work on the railroad. It was a steady job. And in between, when there was a slack season, let's say, he'd work at the potato houses. Dad worked like forever. I remember maybe 1 or 2 years, he'd peel pulp for 50 cents a cord. And he'd come home so sweaty, his shirt was literally wet.
Wow.
And,
yeah, go ahead.
And then I know I was the oldest, so I was just across the school field there. And I'd go down by the potato house. I was usually down by the potato house. And I'd bring him cookies and milk. Now, for a long time, we never even had a refrigerator. They were not around. And but if you remember the pump in the back shed there, by the storeroom behind the house, I don't know if it was another container he had near that, but it was under the floor. Mom would put it was like a separator, the milk can, a big milk can. She'd put that down there, and every once in a while she'd bring it up and take out the milk she needed. And of course we had buttermilk pancakes and buttermilk biscuits and stuff like that, and buttermilk donuts. Dad made buttermilk donuts, and they were good. You know, he cooked in. After they got married, after Dad got back from the service, he had been a cook, quartermaster corps in the service. And when he got back home, he was working at Mrs. Leidy's camps in Winterville, and he was a cook there. So he came home, and Dad, Sunday, Mama played the organ at church for 10 o'clock Mass. And while she was gone, Dad made pies, and he made donuts, and guess who got to wash dishes? I was the only girl. There were 4 boys after me.
And so you had to do all the menial housework?
Hmm?
So you had to do all the menial housework and the boys didn't?
Oh, they helped. Mom pushed them. Leonil and Gerald.
Describe to us your early school days.
When I went to school, there was kind of, how should I say it? I was supposed to be smart because I could speak English, and I knew my letters and I knew my numbers. Mom had spoke English to us at the house. And in those days, not too many people even had books at the house, never mind read or speak English. So I was in kindergarten. I think they kept me for maybe a month or so. I think I spent my time in the little cupboard. I was bored to death. And I was not a very good student. So
You became a teacher.
I remember being put in a little cupboard where there was storage for books and chalk and where it smelled chalky anyway. And I'd open the door a little bit, see what's going on.
Was this at the Dirigo school right next to us?
No, that was at the old convent. In the little back room there where the superintendent had her office for a while.
So you had to walk to school?
We walked to school. We walked to school all the time. And the next door neighbor down in the corner, associates there, where Bertha Blanchette used to stay, that was associate that stayed there. And the Zilia, the oldest daughter, was my age, so we went to school together. And her brother, Camille, supposedly was taking care of us. We'd come home to lunch. In those days, kindergarten came home to lunch, just like everybody else, and we went back in the afternoon. And that first winter, all I remember is waking up in Mama's arms, Mama crying. I had come across, there was a cow pasture out behind the house there. I came across the field. I was alone. For some reason, I was independent enough, I wanted to get home on my own. And one of Mom's cousins who lived on the other side of the Dirigo school there, he was coming home from work, and he saw a little red bonnet and a scarf in the snow. That was me. So he picked me up and brought me home.
Did the school provide lunch? This was almost a mile away.
There was no school lunch then. You either brought your lunch, you brought your lunch to school. I remember not going to school the next day. Boy, I had a good time home. Everybody loved me to pieces. Oh, what kids will remember, huh? To me, it was a good experience. I don't remember being picked up or anything like that.
Do you remember any real good experiences with a favorite teacher or the other extreme teacher that you never would have liked to have again?
Yeah. There was Florence Martin in the 5th grade. She was John Martin's sister. Older sister or cousin, something like that. She used to say, read on, next, next. She was, and come to find out, she had a True Story or something magazine inside her social study book. I'm not fooling when I say that. That was true. But next to her in the 6th grade was Kitty Burns, Kitty Brown at the time. She was a good teacher. She was a really good teacher. Now I remember Sister Celeste in the 4th grade at the convent on the 2nd floor. She was a very dainty, like Marie-Paul there, a very dainty little lady. But if the boys misbehaved, she snapped their fingers with a ruler. And I didn't like her because of that.
What other type of discipline was provided, especially for unruly boys in the schools?
Well, that was, they were sent out in the hall or down. They had no principal. And she had a strap. She'd strap their hands.
Did you ever get the strap?
No.
No.
You got it. So you see, yeah, they did that. I remember we had, down in the school next to the house there, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, Elsie Dow. She was a good teacher. And Mr. Fournier in the 8th grade was a good teacher. He'd been to Puerto Rico, he taught in Puerto Rico. And he was always telling us a story. He made social studies, history and geography came alive with him. You know, he had all kinds of stories about other countries, and if we read about something in our social study book, he usually had pictures to go with things, you know. And after that, to me, social studies and stuff like that, history or geography, that was like a storybook to me. I always did well. That was one of my strong points.
Tell us about how church was a center of the village and family.
Oh, yeah. Well, church was everything. In the summer, we had bazaars, what they called a bazaar. Actually, it wasn't much. My mother was fortune teller. And she'd have something over her head and behind a curtain, and she'd tell everybody's fortune. She knew everybody by name, and she knew all their stories anyway.
I didn't know that. No, how long did she do that for?
Oh, she did that for several years. And then in those bazaars, they had chicken stew. They made chicken stew in those old-fashioned wash boilers, or a big canner on the stove. And Mr. Ouellette used to make bean-hole beans. He wasn't the only one. There was somebody else that made bean-hole beans, great big pots. Like the big pot we have at the cottage there, outside there.
Wait, I want to hear more about this fortune telling.
Yep.
But now, when your mother was a fortune teller, was there any fortunes that some people got upset with? That she...
I know they got upset, but they believed her. They believed her. She had some kind of a scarf, a colorful scarf she used to wrap up with. I don't know what the heck it was. Maybe a bureau scarf or something. An old piece of cloth that she had. Because she'd leave home with a bundle of stuff. And usually that was held on the old convent grounds there, at the corner.
So now the nuns, the Catholic community allowed her to do this? I mean...
Oh yeah. That was a fundraiser. I think they paid 10 cents to have their fortune told. Hey, in those days, if you paid 10 cents a quarter for lunch, that was great. You know?
Wow. So, Matan, tell me what it was like, since you were the eldest daughter, right? What it was like to take care of all your sisters and brothers?
Well, as far as Jean-Louis and Jeanne-D'Arc, they were dolls to me. You know, they were my dolls. I played with them. Yeah.
Like, what kind of playing did you do with them?
Oh, played and rocked them and played on the floor with them or whatever. You know, little games.
Where were you? We get different stories of what happened the day that I was born.
The day you were born, in December, it was a cold day. Mom had a hired girl. I was schooled here. I had started my high school at the time. I started high school at 13. And so I was Christmas vacation, I was home. And Mom sent me and the hired girl with the kids, all of them, down to the lake to go skating. Leonil and Ben and I had made a skating rink down by Furlongs there somewhere, down by the old mill. And so we went out skating with them, brought them on a sled, brought the kids on a sled. And we were supposed to stay away for a certain amount of time. I remember I had a watch, watching the watch, believe me, it was getting cold. So when we finally came back home, the younger ones were really cold. And, you know, you can't keep skating. How much skating can you do for little ones? And we had skates that tied onto our shoes. You know, they were, so.
Well, what was the story that was told to the kids when they arrived at the house?
Well, I remember saying the Indians have come. We have a new baby.
Oh, Doc, can you say that again?
I said, we had a new baby. And I knew I was old enough. I had just turned 14. So I was old enough to know better, but that's what we were told in those days.
And what was the story again?
That there were Indians that come to the house to bring a new baby.
Now, why do you guys always tell that story? Why did you always say the Indians were bringing the babies in?
I don't know. I don't know. That was something that the old folks had told us. Because usually there was a Grammy who stayed with Mom for a few days. She came from Wallagrass. I forget her name right offhand. It's not Bouchard. And so they told us the Indians were going to come, so we'd better go away, you know.
Now, did you, speaking of Indians, were there any relations with the Indians with your family up here during the time you grew up? Were they up here during that time?
Not really. They'd go around and sell baskets or things like that once in a while, but not. But I guess on my grandmother's side, the Labby side, there's an Indian ancestor somewhere.
Tell me what your experiences were with your aunt. Was it Aunt Marie? Because I always heard that she was the most hated aunt by your brothers and sisters, and I want to know why.
Oh, poor Aunt Marie. They moved home. I was in school, and that summer I was working at the Michel camps up at the head of the lake. So I didn't see them too much. But all I know is I remember coming home from school a day or two before, and they had my room.
How did you feel about that?
Not too well, because they'd moved in their furniture. Their furniture was all over the place downstairs. They had nice furniture, but I didn't appreciate it, because they invaded my home. And then they had the youngsters, Leopold. We had a big swing on the porch with those wires, those chains, and the kids used to swing with that and raise, king, sing and have a ball. And they were always making them shut up, They're bad boys. To me, my brothers and sisters could not be bad boys, you know. They were my babies. Oh, I didn't. But Aunt Suzanne was really good. She was an angel. And she helped Mom around the house and everything. But Aunt Marie was, well, let's say she was very disturbed. She was a disappointed old girl.
What made her disappointed?
She got married like everybody else. She had to get married like everybody else. But that night, he was not going to bed with a man. No way. So she left.
So within one day of marriage?
It didn't last a day. It didn't last a day. She never wanted to go to bed with him. She just went off. And her hair was dyed pitch black, and she had these, well, we called her the old witch. Because to her, to us, that was, and she was always dressed in black. She had a long Nicknair nose, of course. And, well, that was a Thibodeau nose. She was a Thibodeau.
Now, didn't she have a physical ailment?
She had something. I don't know what it was.
You said she used to shake or something like that? I remember hearing some experiences where she actually shook and fell. Were you around when...
Well, I remember that she'd disappear. She'd go walking and disappear. They'd catch her downtown somewheres, or she'd just take off. Poor Aunt Susie.
And what was the deal with Aunt Susie?
My Aunt Susie was, I think she was older than Aunt Marie, but she was such a beauty. She reminded me of Aunt Eva a little bit. That type of personality, you know. Easygoing and always helpful. And Mama always had them in for any holidays or something for meals. And Aunt Susie would make these fancy Jell-O and cream desserts and things that my mother didn't bother to make those. We had Jell-O and cream, but you know, it was not as a put-together dessert.
What were early Christmases like in Eagle Lake?
Well, I remember Christmas, we'd put up our stockings. We always had stockings. We didn't always have a tree. We started having trees when I was about 10 years old, I'd say 10, 11. And we used to make our own garlands with colored paper and popcorn. And actually, when Dad smoked, they had tin foil in the cigarette package. We'd save those and make balls out of those, make decorations for the tree. The first bought decorations, I think, were, Mama had given me some money when I was freshman here in school, freshman or sophomore, to buy a few balls, a little bit of tinsel and stuff. Then we became aware that Christmas was, you know, something else. And then we'd have a few candles to put in the tree. How we dared to light those, I don't know. With little clips.
So now, speaking of your father smoking, now were you around when he made the decision to quit?
It was expensive, and he started rolling his own. And that didn't work out too well, I think. They didn't always hold together too well. So he quit.
Okay.
It was the expense.
Right.
I remember Dad picking potatoes for 25 cents a barrel. They were making payments on the house, and I remember when he came with $100, that was a heck of a lot of potatoes.
How about the summer Sunday campouts at Camp Cozy or?
Well, that's after I started teaching, after he bought the boat. When I started teaching, he bought a canoe so he could take me to school. I was teaching across the lake. In the winter, I'd cross on the ice with snowshoes. And there was a neighbor's dog. I didn't know it was Furlongs or somebody in that area. Their dog used to follow me across the lake
There must have been
with my lunch pail and my school bag.
There must have been times in spring or fall that you could not go.
Well, when I couldn't go, I stayed at the Ouellettes. I stayed there for a couple of weeks in the spring, a couple of weeks in the fall.
So that's how you met Pat.
On the ice in and ice out.
That's how you met Pat.
Actually, just that first year I met him. I'll tell you how I met him. I married Santa Claus. You don't know that, but Alfina was supposed to be my Santa Claus. I had borrowed a Santa Claus suit from somebody. I don't know where, and she was going to come to school. Now the kids, some of them have never had anything for Christmas. They were very poor. There was one family, they used to bring pancakes with beans rolled up in it. That was their lunch at school, cold. And I felt so sorry for them. Mama used to give me potatoes. I remember they had coffee cans. I used to put a coffee can near it was one of those buck stoves. That was the heat we had there. And I'd put it near the chimney there on the stove, and my potato was baked by noontime. So I had a hot potato.
So you had to heat your own building.
There was one of the one of the Wizin boys would come and light the stove early in the morning and shovel the porch off or whatever. And the outhouse was connected to the back of the school. Two little seats separated, and but that was kind of cold. There was no convenience at all, believe me, in the winter.
Okay, now I want to go back, and you were ready to tell us that you married Santa Claus.
Right.
I want to hear about that.
Well, that first Christmas I borrowed a Santa Claus suit somewhere. Mama had made popcorn balls, and I had written to the Bangor Daily News, and I told them the age of my kids, and they sent me a big box of stuff for the kids, for their Christmas. We wrapped those up, and that was their Christmas. So Mama had Mr. Ouellette, past father, come to the house and pick that up. Alfina was supposed to be my Santa Claus. Now, when the Ouellettes walk in, the parents had all come in because we had a little skit and things, for the kids. And the parents all come in, and here's Alfina, and there's no Santa Claus. And by, here comes the bells and everything, and here comes Santa Claus. It was Pat. I knew him, but I didn't.
So he came and saved the day.
He saved the day. They worked in the woods, and so they'd come in, and so he decided to be Santa Claus.
Now, what was your first date like with him? Who asked who out?
Well, the thing is, in those days, after midnight mass, you had a réveillon, huh?
Qu'est-ce que c'est la réveillon?
It's a wake-up lunch after midnight mass. Usually it was chicken stew. Everything was always chicken stew. And they were having a réveillon at Bernice Nicknair Ouellettes, and he asked my parents if he could take me. So after midnight mass, we went to the réveillon. That was our first date. That's funny, huh?
Yeah. How'd you feel about that?
Well, it was fun. They were a big family, and everybody had their friends in. Mrs. Ouellette was so welcoming. They had a big, big, big kitchen.
So you met him amongst everybody else at the same
Yeah.
time, right? What was after that, did you have a private time with him? What was your second date like?
They left right after New Year's. They'd leave and go to the woods and stay in the woods all winter.
Oh, so you didn't see him for a while after that?
No. I was busy teaching anyway.
When was the next time you saw him?
Sometime in the spring when they come in. I don't know.
Very neat. So when did he decide to propose to you?
How he proposed to me, we'd been going out a couple of years. I wasn't ready to get married. Actually, we were supposed to get married in the spring. In the fall. He got a suit and everything, and I changed my mind. Yeah. So we got married the next spring after that. He had to buy 2 suits. It was good. He had 2 suits. I thought it was a pretty good idea. We went out together over 4 years. Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. What got you into teaching?
Actually, that was about the only business that was in Eagle Lake. There was no secretarial work. There was nothing in Eagle Lake to do. Unless you were a nurse, and I wasn't about to go into nursing. That was not my thing.
So, who was your mentor then? What convinced you to become a teacher besides being the only job in town? Is there someone that you...
Well, I admired my mom. I think my mom was my inspiration.
And the reason why was your mom a teacher as well?
Oh, she always taught. Mom was an excellent teacher.
What, did she teach you?
Nope, she never taught me.
What grades did she teach?
She was teaching, she taught everything. Usually she'd teach 7th or 8th grade, and then she went back to teaching the lower grades after a while.
Now, were you around when your father went to serve in World War I and your mom went to work as an interpreter in Washington, D.C.? Or was it
No, they weren't married. They got married after the war, and when he came back.
Now, you grew up through World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
You grew up through World War II. What was that like?
Well, as a kid, I was...
Oh, okay. Camera's rolling. Okay.
Where do you want to go?
We're going to talk about your mom being a midwife for the town.
Oh, well, as long as I remember, Mom was always called in on sick cases. Anyone who was sick would come and see Mom for cold remedies and all kinds of stuff. She'd make him a mint tea of some sort, and kinds of stuff like that. Mrs. Ouellette did the same thing across the lake. And then if she said they needed the doctor, they'd call the doctor. Because the doctor, if you made house calls, that was $25. My God, that was a lot of money. Maybe he didn't charge that, I don't know, but I'm just saying. And I know the birth of a baby was $25. But they'd call Mom, and she'd say, well, we better call the doctor. Things didn't always go well. I remember her going to the neighbor, and a girl had a baby. I couldn't figure that out at first, you know, but it happened. The Sauciers, they lived the right next door neighbor up above home there. And
So sometimes Mama would deliver babies before the doctor got there.
well, the baby was, I don't know if he was born before the doctor got there, but pretty darn close.
And your mom used to do this quite a bit.
Well, she used to leave home with a bag full of clean sheets and stuff. Some people were not quite as neat as they could have been. Yeah.
Talk to me about Aunt Jackie's hernia situation and the bargaining with the doctor.
Well, Jackie was brought to the hospital almost like an emergency case to start with. And we didn't go to the hospital for colds or things like that then, not unless it was an absolute. And I remember I was at school again. And for both of them, I'd come home from school. Every weekend, I'd come home with my dirty clothes, because we had no laundry facilities at school. I'd bring my dirty clothes home and I'd haul off to the hospital to see whoever was there, and back home.
You remember Mary Paul being young and sickly when she was a baby?
Okay, I'm stopping tape. And camera is rolling? Okay, go.
O'Neill was always a lively one. He was rambunctious, if nothing else. And he was adventurous. He always tried all kinds of stuff. And when he was little, he was crawling. And he wanted to, if Mama didn't put him outdoors, he'd crawl down the stairs and out. So she had to tie him, because he'd crawl under the fence toward the schoolyard there. Mama tied him up. I thought it was cruel at first, and then she said, "You want to run after him all the time?" So that was our option. He wasn't even really walking. He was something else again. And I remember I'd had a doll that, one of those dolls that cries, and he wanted to find out what was going on with it. So he took the voice box up. He just screwed it out. I don't know whether a pair of scissors or a screwdriver or something got it out. Oh, I was not happy. That's why I like Gerald, the brother that died, because he'd play with me. See, there was O'Neill, there was Gerald, there was Benna, and there was Armin. I had 4 boys after me, no girls.
Talk to me more about Gerald.
Gerald was, well, compared to O'Neill, was almost the opposite. He was, I guess maybe he was too quiet, but he was, he played with me, you know. We'd play house or whatever, like kids do. And, but O'Neill, we used to play church in the stairs, in the old stairway there. And O'Neill was always a priest. He was a boss. And we had those Necco wafers, you know, those wafers? Those were our hosts. They were very sweet. Everybody was always ready to receive. Yeah.
Sweeter than what you got at church, huh?
Oh, it was sweet. Yeah. Kids. We used to use a diaper for, somebody had to be a nun. We used a diaper for a veil. Mama had little, for the babies there, Mama had little diapers, you know. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to get into something a little harder. I wanted to talk to you about what happened to your house. You had an event that occurred to your house, a crisis period.
Well, we had just, Pat was working on the railroad and his brother Alfie was staying here. They had just painted the whole inside of the house. They just got done. Pat had made me a bookcase. You remember my floor-to-ceiling bookcase in the other room there. And I had just put my books in. And that night everybody was tired. So I remember hanging my dirty dress on the corner. I had a big crib in my room. We got up to fire. What I think, it never was proven, but Alfie was here and Roderick slept here that night. And they'd come in through the back door. There was a shed. and in the bottom there was like a walk around platform around two sides of it. And in the center of that, on the ground, on the earth floor, was Pat's saw and his, and there was, as far as we know, turpentine and paint and all the leftover stuff like that. That's where the fire started. Because when we got up, we closed the door to that, and got out as quick as we could. And I put on the first thing I could grab and get the kids up. So we went to the neighbor down here and the neighbor across the street with the kids. And I guess we were pretty well smoked up. The shed was
How many
practically.
children did you have at that time?
My God, we had them all but Vi. I was pregnant for Vi. So I had 6 of them.
And what was it now, after the house was burned, what was it like? And I understand you came back.
Well, in fact, I borrowed clothes from the neighbor here to go home. I didn't want my mom, and Mom had gone down to see Dad in Togus. Dad was in Togus at the hospital, the Vets hospital. I got home and Jackie, and it was Jackie that was with you, right? So the next day, I measured the kids' feet, and Pat and I came down here to try to get clothes for them. There was not much that I could use at the house. Some of the dresser drawers had stayed closed, but everything was all smoked up. So we washed and washed and washed, but it was good. And there was no Good Shepherd Shopton. I wish there had been. Oh, good heavens. We got a few things for the kids. What they needed most. And Pat took off. He was working on the railroad, so he took 2 months. And he stayed and rebuilt the house. And he got somebody to help him. So we moved back in August, at the end of August, in August sometime, more or less.
So you had a rebuilt house? That's great.
I had a new house. And they enlarged the kitchen to where, because the kitchen came to about the middle of those windows here. Just this side of the first cupboard here. That's where the kitchen was. From there on was a shed. We had to enlarge, my God, we had 6 kids.
Now, speaking of kids, you had a lot of kids. Now, why did you have so many kids?
Just because they happened to come along. They're not planned, all of them, believe me. Today you plan things, but I was not a regular person anyway, so never had time to get regular, I don't think.
You actually, I want you to tell me this in your own words, but you told me something that by having this many kids has actually made you feel very alive. So I wonder if you could tell me that in your own words.
I don't know. I never was really sick when I was pregnant. My pregnancies were fairly easy, most of them. And, I always had what I needed. Pat made sure I had the right foods. But you want to remember that in those days you went to see the doctor about a month or so before the baby was due. Make sure the doctor was aware that you were expecting. So you didn't have any medication the way they have now. But Ouellette and Mom would advise me on what I should have. The foods I should have and the care I needed.
How do you think things have been going for you as a whole?
Well, life goes on. I'm not where I feel I've had a pretty good life. I've been more or less happy. Of course, there's always upsets in life, no matter who you are or where you live. I don't know of any couple that doesn't have any upsets somewheres. If Pat hadn't had his problem, we'd have been just about the happiest family on, because he was a good worker, good provider. And he loved the kids. He was good to his kids. He was a good neighbor. The neighbors came here to have help building a staircase or fitting in a door or something. He was always there to help them.
Great. That's it, my talent.
Good.
We're good.
Very good.
Thank you.